Nine people are scheduled to be executed in 2025. Stephen Nelson, February 5, Texas. He is on death row for the 2011 murder of 28-year-old Arlington pastor Clinton Dobson. Nelson was born on February 18, 1987, in Oklahoma. He was abused and neglected as a child and had a brother and a sister who was deaf. While Nelson's father was frequently away from his life and violent toward his wife and children, Nelson's mother occasionally left him alone at home for 3 or 4 days and never gave her kids much attention. Nelson attended school through the 11th grade. When he was just 3 years old, he went to burn his mother's bed in the living room in order to hurt himself. When he was 6, he committed property offenses, burglaries, thefts, and serious assault, which led to multiple encounters with Oklahoma's juvenile authorities. He was placed in a high-risk juvenile detention facility at an early age because of his ongoing involvement in crimes, despite efforts by authorities to intervene through counseling and probation. Nelson relocated to Tarrant County, Texas with his family. He was tried in Texas juvenile courts nonetheless, since he kept committing crimes. In a rare instance for property offenses at his age, Nelson was sentenced to an indeterminate period in a juvenile prison after being apprehended at the age of 14 for illegal motor vehicle usage, burglary, and criminal trespassing. Nelson was first given a 9-month sentence, but because of his repeated violations, which included 4 high-level disciplinary hearings, he was there for more than 3.5 years. By the time he was 20, Nelson had been freed on parole twice while evading the juvenile justice system, but he consistently broke the terms of his parole each time. Nelson continued to commit crimes as an adult. He was arrested for using a stolen vehicle in 2005 when he was 18 years old. Nelson pretended to be a Walmart employee and stole a laptop from the store in November 2007 by concealing it in his jeans. He was caught stealing boots by wearing them out of the store without paying at another Walmart in Arlington the following week. Nelson assaulted his then live-in girlfriend after being released from state prison in 2010, and the victim filed a complaint against him, leading to Nelson's indictment for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. His fiancée filed a non-prosecution affidavit to withdraw the charges 3 days later, but the DA rejected it due to his lengthy criminal history. After that, he was put on probation and taken to the Intermediate Sanctions Facility for a 90-day program. When he was 24 years old, he was accused of killing a pastor in a church in Arlington, Texas, on March 3, 2011. 2 members of the North Point Baptist Church were present when Nelson, who was still on probation for assaulting his ex-girlfriend, stormed into the building on that day. Among them were Judy Elliott, a 69-year-old secretary employed by the church, and Clinton Dobson, a 28-year-old preacher. Stephen allegedly attacked Dobson and Elliott with the purpose to rob them. Dobson was beaten before being strangled with a computer extension cable and then covered with a plastic bag. Dobson died as a result of the vicious attack and asphyxia. Elliot, on the other hand, was badly beaten, suffering catastrophic injuries to her face, head, arms, legs, and back, in addition to internal bleeding in her brain. Despite this, Elliot survived. Nelson took Elliot's credit cards, Dobson's laptop, a cell phone, and Elliot's vehicle after leaving Elliot for dead. Nelson eventually sold the laptop for cash and used the credit cards to buy jewelry and new clothes. After his arrest, Nelson was charged with capital murder. He was detained in a Tarrant County jail upon his indictment, pending trial for the murder of Clint Dobson. Nelson had often broken the rules and behaved violently and disruptively while he was on remand. He broke a telephone in the visitation booth, damaged prison property, and threatened an officer, among other major offenses. Additionally, he frequently engaged in physical altercations with prison guards, including one instance in which 3 guards had to restrain Nelson in order to stop him. The most significant event, nevertheless, happened on March 19, 2012, when Nelson was accused of killing a mentally ill prisoner. Sources claim that on that particular day, Jonathan Holden, a prisoner serving a sentence for stealing, allegedly murmured a racist epithet that was disparaging to African Americans, which infuriated some of the other inmates. Nelson, who was also African American, became enraged. He lured Holden to the bars of his cell and brandished a noose which he fashioned out of blankets. Nelson urged Holden to stage a suicide attempt by hanging himself in order to gain a transfer to a different area of the prison. Holden moved to the bars of the cage and obeyed. Nelson then wrapped the noose around Holden's neck, tightened the blanket by pressing his feet against the bars and tugging on it with both hands. He then dragged Holden against the wall and nearly off his feet. Nelson allegedly performed a celebration dance and even played a broom as a guitar after killing Holden. Following a unanimous decision by all 12 jurors to impose the death penalty, then 25-year-old Stephen Lewayne Nelson was given the death penalty on October 16, 2012. In vengeance against the judge and jury for giving him a death sentence, Nelson reportedly broke a fire sprinkler and poured black fire retardant liquid into the courtroom following his sentencing. In an interview with the Associated Press, Nelson maintained his innocence even after his trial was over. He said that he struggled with anger management but denied that he was a murderer. Judge Stephen Jones signed the death warrant on June 10, 2024, after Nelson had been on death row for nearly 12 years. Richard Tabler, February 13, Texas. On November 26, 2004, 25-year-old Richard Tabler and his accomplice, Timothy Dawn Payne, an 18-year-old Fort Hood soldier, shot and killed a strip club manager and another male victim in a Killeen nightclub. Tabler had previously worked at the club, which was run by Mohammed Amin Rahmouni, 25, before the double murder. Following a disagreement that resulted in Tabler losing his job, Rahmouni allegedly threatened to destroy Tabler's family for $10. As a result, on November 18, 2004, Tabler made the decision to kill Rahmouni and developed a plan. Tabler purchased a camcorder, a pickup truck, and a 9mm gun in order to prepare for his crime. On Thanksgiving Day, November 26, 2004, Tabler reached out to Rahmouni and offered to sell him some stereo equipment for $1,500. They set up a meeting in a nearby business parking lot. After that, Rahmouni's buddy Haitham Frank Zayed, 28, drove Rahmouni to the rendezvous. Once they were there, Tabler, who was on the pickup truck with Payne, shot Zayed and then Rahmouni. Payne also recorded portions of the shootings. Later, Tabler pulled Rahmouni and Zayed's bodies out of the vehicles. He shot again Rahmouni because the man was still alive when he was removed from the car. Tabler took a black bag and a wallet from the car after the killings, but Payne kept the videotape and showed it to a friend before destroying it. Tabler had even boasted to a roommate about the killings. He called the Bell County Sheriff's Office the night after killing Rahmouni and Zayed, claiming responsibility for the double murder and vowing to carry out another one. Tabler perpetrated another double murder 2 days later on November 28, 2004, and this time his victims were adolescent girls. Tabler claims that he had a hit list of 11 Rahmouni's bar employees that he intended to murder. He selected 2 teenage girls who were dancers at the club, Amanda Benefield, 16, and Tiffany Lorraine Dotson, 18. Tabler brought the girls to the lake after luring them out with the promise of drug use. Then, he turned the gun on both of them and shot them several times. According to reports, Tabler thought the girls had linked him to Rahmouni and Zayed's murders. Following the murders of Benefield and Dotson, Tabler called the sheriff's office once more to make fun of the recent killings. He threatened to come after the police if they did not close the club and said he would kill more people, specifically all of the remaining staff members of Rahmouni's club. On April 2, 2007, the jury found Tabler guilty of each count of capital murder related to the Thanksgiving double deaths. Tabler was sentenced to death. Although a trial has not yet been scheduled for the Benefield-Dotson double murder, Tabler continues to face allegations of killing the girls, notwithstanding his conviction. Payne is incarcerated at Memorial Unit, serving his life sentence. He will be eligible for parole in 2044 after serving at least 40 years. David Leonard Wood, March 13, Texas. Between May and August 1987, David Leonard Wood, also known as the Desert Killer, murdered at least 6 women and girls in El Paso, Texas, and buried their bodies in the desert. 9 girls, ages 13 to 24, vanished from the El Paso area between February and August 1987. Marjorie Knox, 14, was the first of them. She vanished on February 14. Although she lived in the El Paso suburb of Chaparral, New Mexico, She had traveled to the city that day to join friends for a Valentine's Day celebration in Veterans Park. Melissa Alanis, 13, also vanished 3 weeks later on March 7. Because they were co-workers at the Rockwell Company, the parents of both girls knew one another. According to Alanis's parents, their daughter had been going through puberty and had gotten to know a number of young men with criminal histories in the months before she vanished. The disappearance of 15-year-old Desiree Wetley was reported to El Paso police on June 7. According to several witnesses, she was last seen 5 days earlier in a convenience shop with a man who had multiple tattoos on his arms. Wetley lived close to Wood's home, went to H.E. Charles Jr. High School, and had no history of drug or alcohol use. The disappearance of 20-year-old Karen Baker, who was last seen alive on the grounds of the Hawaiian Royale Motel on June 5th, was reported to the police 3 days later. Her mother claimed that she had been abducted and transported to Mexico, which prompted the FBI to look into the matter after the witnesses provided contradictory versions of her activities before going missing. After heading to a Circle K to buy cigarettes on June 28, 19-year-old Cheryl Lynn Vasquez Dismukes, who worked at a nearby Whataburger, vanished from sight in El Paso. Witnesses said that she was last seen conversing with a man in a pickup truck. Another missing person was 17-year-old Angelica Jeanette Frausto, who was reported missing on July 3. Since she was 12, this girl had been a frequent fugitive, frequently missing days or even months of school. She left Henderson Middle School at the age of 15 and started working as a dancer at Red Flame, a bar that Wood often visited. During the course of the investigation, the detectives found that Frausto was given a motorbike ride by one of her friends. On August 20, 1 month later, Rosa Maria Casio's parents called the police. On August 12, they said she was in Ciudad Juarez visiting her sister, and that evening she drove to El Paso to buy postage stamps, after which she disappeared. Her 1974 Ford Grand Torino was discovered abandoned on a street the next morning, still containing Casio's possessions. Interviews with locals yielded no helpful details about her disappearance. Although Casio was employed as a topless dancer in an El Paso bar, her parents claimed that she was not a prostitute and intended to finish her schooling at Dallas College Brookhaven campus. Parkland High School student Dawn Marie Smith, 14 years old, was reported missing in September 1987. Before fleeing the house, she had argued with her parents in June and declared she would never go back. Before all communication stopped on August 28, she continued having conversations with some of her relatives. Although it has never been confirmed, local sources told police that Smith was shot and killed by a motorbike on a Chaparral property. Following a number of investigations, Wood was convicted of 6 murders by jury verdict and was officially sentenced to death on January 14, 1993. Moises Sandoval Mendoza, April 23, Texas. Mendoza was convicted of killing Rachel O'Neill Tolson, a 20-year-old woman, by strangling, essaying, and stabbing her in March 2004. Mendoza attempted to burn the body and then dispose of it in a creek bed in eastern Collin County. Mendoza attended Farmsville High School, where the victim also went to school. Despite attending the same school, they never dated or truly knew one another until they connected around 6 weeks prior to the murder. On the same evening that the girl vanished, Moises Mendoza was spotted at a friend's residence with Travis Rose and Jeremy Neal. There were 3 grand jury warrants for Mendoza's arrest on accusations of robbery and severe violence. Tolson's body was brutally strangled, concealed behind Mendoza's house, and then burned, relocated, and positioned in the distant fields near Copeville and Greenville off of Highway 380. Rachel had a 6-month-old baby. Percy Hutton, June 18, Ohio. Hutton was found guilty of killing Derek Ricky Mitchell, 24, on September 16, 1985, in Cleveland, Ohio. He has been on Ohio's execution row for more than 35 years. Before Percy Hutton began to suspect that Derek Ricky Mitchell and Samuel Simmons Jr. had stolen from him, the men were close friends. Hutton visited Samuel's house on a Friday, September 13, or a Saturday, September 14, 1985, and questioned him regarding a stolen sewing machine. Hutton insisted that the equipment be given back after claiming to have witnessed Derek attempt to sell it. Samuel advised Hutton to speak with Derek. Derek arrived at the house as Hutton and Samuel were having a conversation. Hutton was led upstairs by Derek. As they went back downstairs, Samuel overheard Hutton threaten to kill the two if he discovered the machine had been stolen. On Monday, September 16, 1985, Hutton made the early morning drive to Samuel's house. Bruce Laster, Hutton's future brother-in-law, accompanied him. When they got there, Hutton called Samuel outside to assist with fixing a vehicle. Samuel saw a weapon resting on the car's rear seat. Then, saying he needed to speak with Derek, Hutton took Samuel to his residence. Derek was brought out of the house by Samuel. Hutton confronted the man and Derek once more regarding the missing sewing machine that held $750. The two men allegedly stole tires from Hutton's garden as well. Hutton insisted that he witnessed Derek attempt to sell the sewing machine to another man after Derek once more denied ever having it. To resolve the matter, Hutton intended to take Derek to that man's house. Hutton drove to a parking lot beside the bus facility, and Derek and Samuel got into the car with him. Derek and Hutton exited the vehicle and made their way a short distance away. Samuel saw Hutton place a gun to Derek's head, but he was unable to hear the conversation. Derek offered Hutton directions to another building when they got back in the car. Derek and Hutton entered that building and came out with a white sewing machine case. Hutton went back to the car after dropping off the sewing machine at his mother's place. He parked next to a Cadillac Eldorado after driving down the next block. Hutton informed Samuel that he intended to steal the vehicle. Bruce and Derek were inside when Hutton parked his car at the end of the block. Samuel and Hutton went back to the Eldorado, broke in, and Samuel tried to start it. Hutton then ran up the alley to Samuel's car after shooting him twice in the back of the head. Bruce, Derek, and Hutton left the scene. Samuel attempted to seek assistance after surviving the shooting. Soon after, Hutton came back for Samuel and informed Bruce and Derek that Samuel had been shot by an unidentified individual. Samuel was driven to the hospital by Hutton. Derek had already left when Samuel tried to send someone to inform him that Hutton had shot him. Derek was never again seen alive. The discovery of his body occurred on September 30, 1985. The same type of bullet that had been taken from Samuel's head had been used to kill him. On September 17, 1985, Hutton took a car to Indianapolis. On October 5, he turned himself in to the authorities. Bruce was also taken into custody in relation to Derek's passing. Samuel Morland, July 30, Ohio. For the 1985 Dayton murders of his girlfriend, Glenna Green, 46, her daughter, Lana Green, 23, and three of Glenna Green's grandkids, Datron Talbot, 7, Detuan Talbot, 6, and Violana Green, 6, Morland was found guilty and given the death penalty. Morland and Green had an argument about money. He needed some in order to buy alcohol, and Green refused to provide that to him. Ohio has an unofficial moratorium on the death penalty, driven by the fact that they are struggling to obtain the necessary substances to carry out executions. We'll see if in 2025 this will change. Douglas Coley, September 30, Ohio. Douglas Coley abducted, robbed, and attempted to kill David Moore in Toledo on December 23, 1996, with Joseph Green's help. Samara Lokdi was then shot in the eyes and abandoned to perish in a Toledo alley on January 3, 1997. On January 7, the same year, Toledo police pulled over a Pontiac sedan driven by Green and owned by Lokdi. The deputy coroner discovered that Lokdi had been shot in the back of the cerebellum, which caused her death. The bullet, which had been fired from a muzzle distance of perhaps 12 to 18 inches, had hit her between the eyes. The deputy coroner came to the conclusion that Lokdi did not pass away instantly. Timothy Coleman, October 30, Ohio. Melinda Stevens was shot dead in an alley behind Riddle's Ribs in Springfield, Ohio, on the evening of January 2, 1996. Timothy Coleman was found guilty of her aggravated murder and given the death penalty. Stevens had conducted controlled purchases of drugs from suspected drug dealers throughout the previous summer while serving as a confidential informant for the Springfield Police Department. The cops watched and documented 3 different occasions when Stevens bought cocaine from Coleman. Coleman was charged by a grand jury in September of 1995 for aggravated trafficking and related possession counts as a result of these sales. He had a newborn baby and was facing many years behind bars. He murdered Stevens to prevent her from testifying against him in court. Kareem Jackson, December 10, Ohio. Jackson robbed a little amount of Mary Jane and $45 from two Columbus men, killing them execution style. He was given a death sentence for killing Terrence L. Walker and Ontario Hunter on March 25, 1997, during a drug heist at an apartment building close to Oakland Park Avenue and Westerville Road in Clinton Township. Both of Jackson's legs were shattered during a failed escape attempt from the Franklin County Jail, and he was in a wheelchair with both hands chained at the time of his sentencing. Jackson participated in his church's young choir and made it to the finals of the Bible Bowl, a national competition. But when he was 16, he moved out and began engaging in a variety of illegal activities. Following 10 to 15 years in prison, Jackson's co-defendants Derek Boone, Michael Patterson, and Malaika Williamson were released. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.